if you have to make a decision, you know that you have a four-way test that helps you do that, right? So as a climate scientist, when I studied climate science, I thought, well, why not apply the four-way test to climate change? So that's what I'm going to do here today. The first question, is it the truth? And when we look at climate, first of all, we have to start with, well, what is it? It isn't the weather. The weather is what happens in a certain place at a certain time. It could be hot or cold. It could be wet or dry. The weather is like a single tree, and climate is like the forest. Climate is all of the weather every day of the year for at least 20 to 30 years. So over 20 to 30 years, is climate changing? Is that the truth? To answer this, we use weather stations all around the world, thousands of them. We use satellites that orbit our planet. We use buoys in the Great Lakes and the oceans. And when we put all that together, this is what we get. This is the temperature of our planet. It goes up and down from year to year, but decade after decade after decade, it goes up and up and up. Another way to look at this is something we call the warming stripes. Every stripe is a year. If it's cooler, it's blue, and if it's warmer, it's red. What about if we go farther back? Well, using tree rings and coral reef records and ice cores, as well as records of when the cherry trees have been blooming for 1,300 years, and written records from ships that crossed the Atlantic 300 years ago, we can put all of this data together and we can look at how things have changed even farther back. Looking over the history of human civilization on this planet, our civilization has been around for about 6,000 to 8,000 years, we see that over most of our time, the Earth was gradually, slowly cooling until now. That doesn't look so good. And when we go back even further, we see that there have been these regular cycles of warmer and colder, but right now, when we should be getting colder, instead we're getting warmer. So is our climate changing? The answer is clearly yes. And then the next question is why? How do we know it's not just the sun or a natural cycle or volcanoes? Well, when we look at the sun, it turns out the sun's energy has been going down the last 60 years, not up. So it can't be the sun making us warmer. Natural cycles don't create heat, they just move it around from east to west, north to south, ocean to atmosphere and back again. And today the whole Earth is warming. The ocean, the atmosphere, the land, the ice, the whole thing is getting warmer. And when people say, well, what about volcanoes? I say, yes, what about them? Volcanic eruptions actually cool the Earth. They produce these little particles that reflect the sun's energy back to space like an umbrella, making us cooler for a few weeks to a few months. We've known that the planet was warming, and we've known why since the 1800s. These are the real scientists who discovered that humans are responsible for the warming we see today. How? Well, our planet has a natural blanket of heat-trapping gases. The sun's energy shines through that blanket like a window. The Earth absorbs that energy and heats up. And just like a blanket keeps you warm at night. How? By trapping your body heat. In the same way, this natural blanket keeps us the perfect temperature for life. In fact, we would be a frozen ball of ice if it wasn't for this natural blanket. So what's the problem? The problem is that by digging up and burning coal and gas and oil, by cutting down trees, and through large-scale industrial agriculture, we are producing more and more of these heat-trapping gases that are building up in the atmosphere, wrapping an extra blanket around the planet. And just like you would, if someone snuck into your room at night and put an extra blanket on you, what would you do? You'd wake up sweating. You'd say, I'm too warm, I don't need this blanket. That's what's happening to our planet. Now, this is why many people refer to this issue as global warming, because the whole planet is warming. But how we experience it ourselves is not so much global warming as it is global weirding. Wherever we live, the weather is getting weirder, isn't it? We've always had heat waves, but they're getting more intense and more dangerous. We've always had droughts, but they're getting longer. We've always had wildfires, yes, even here in Canada, of course. But they're burning much greater area than they used to. And we've always had storms, but they're getting bigger and more dangerous. If you just look at any headlines today, flooding in Africa, wildfires in Canada, heat in the United States. And when we look at the headlines, we see that it's affecting us. It's not just about like the planet and not people. We are being impacted. 2 years ago, the estimate was $16 million an hour. Last year, the estimate was $2 trillion over the last decade. Now, the latest estimate is $1 trillion just for one country for 1 year. And there's many things that we can't put a dollar sign on, like the air that we breathe, the food that we all eat, the water we drink, the buildings and the roads and the infrastructure that we all depend on, the nature that surrounds us. And so people often talk about saving the planet, but I say, it's not about saving the planet. The planet will be orbiting the sun long after we are gone. It is literally about saving us humans and all the living things that share this home with us, on which our life depends. So is this real? Is this serious? It is. And this brings us to the second question. Is it fair? Well, we know that when we look at which countries have contributed most to this blanket we're wrapping around the planet, the US is number 1, China is number 2, Russia's number 3, then we've got India, Brazil, Canada's top 10. But then we look at who has bared the brunt of the impacts. It's the opposite. The people who have done the least to cause the problem are bearing the worst of the consequences. That's not fair. That's the definition of unfair. As Pope Francis said a number of years ago, he said, global warming is caused by the enormous consumption of the wealthy, with repercussions in where? The poorest places in the planet. And a more recent study by Oxfam found that the richest 1% produce twice the emissions of the poorest 50%. That's not fair. So what about the third question? The third question in the four-way test is, will doing something about this build goodwill and better friendships? Well, when we look around the world is changing. The world is changing in ways that are bringing energy to places that didn't have it, that are making energy cleaner and more efficient, that are changing people's lives for the better. And in fact, if we ask people around the world, do you want to be acting on this? The answer is a resounding yes. 80% want their country to do more. 78% think their country should protect people more from this global weirding. 72% want to accelerate the transition to clean energy. And some of these changes are happening in places you wouldn't expect. Like, I live in Texas, the Alberta of the US, And Texas has more wind and more utility scale solar energy than any other state in the country. But last year, China installed more solar energy in 1 year than the US has in its entire history. And also this past year, the country of Pakistan installed more solar energy in 1 year than Canada has in its entire history. The world is changing very quickly, and these solutions are building goodwill around the world. So this brings us to the last question. Will this action be beneficial to all concerned? And when thinking about changes, people often say, oh, change is so expensive. It's expensive only if we don't look at the big picture. If we look at the big picture, the T here stands for $1 trillion globally, only nature solutions alone, reforestation, green infrastructure, mangroves that protect our coastlines, that's $4 trillion all by itself. Then, a new Cambridge study from last year found that transitioning to clean energy will save $12 trillion, and the faster we do it, the more money it saves. Then, we already subsidize fossil fuels every year to the tune of nearly $1,000 per person every year. And it turns out that if you invest in resilience, you get a return on investment of 27%. That's a pretty good return on investment. Not to mention that there's many things you can't put a dollar figure on, right? These solutions give us cleaner air and water, protect us from disasters, improve our health, give us energy that is more affordable, not less, reduce inequality, create healthy ecosystems and healthy food systems, give us a better world. How could this not be beneficial? So at this point, I just have one question left, which is, if climate change passes the four-way test, then why haven't we fixed it already? And I want to share an idea with you. We know that it is true. And if you don't think it is, I have a lot of videos on YouTube called Global Weirding. Yes, that is the name of the video that you can go and watch to learn more. If we ask people around the world, are you worried about this issue? This is what the world looks like. The gray areas weren't surveyed. Anywhere that's pink is more than 60% of people say yes. But then they ask people, how often do you hear about it? What's the connection? If you don't talk about something, why should you care? And if you don't care, why would you ever do anything about it? We aren't talking about this. So when I got a chance to do a TED Talk a few years ago, I decided I wanted to do a TED Talk on the most important solution we aren't talking about, which is talking about it. It seems so obvious, right? I mean, how do humans ever do anything together? As journalist Sarah Peach says, talk is the fertile field in which cultural change begins. In its absence, we can't fix a problem. The goal is not to hit people upside the head, tell them about what they need to be doing. It's to bring them into the conversation. And isn't that what you do at your local Rotary every week? Now, some people might say, well, I'm not a scientist. What am I supposed to say? Turns out, scientists are the second best messengers. You know who the first best are? You, people we know. And every week, I have a newsletter that has good news, not so good news, and something you can do. So every week I have stories that you can share with people around you. And I call my newsletter Talking Climate. What do people need to know? It turns out that according to the science, they need to know 6 things. It's real, it's us, it's serious, and experts agree. But the even more important things we need to know is that others care and there is hope. Hope is not burying our head in the sand and saying, oh, I hope everything will be okay. If that's all we do, it won't be. Hope begins by recognizing we have a situation. We have a challenge. We have a problem that unaddressed will turn into a crisis. But a better future is possible. There's a path to get there that has benefits for all and builds goodwill and friendship. And around the world, the number one motivation people have for walking that path is love. Love for the next generation is what empowers us to fight for a better world. And that is why hope is not wishful thinking. Rather, that is what gives us all the power to act. Thank you.